Hello students, in the last video we have completed the male reproductive system. Now in this video we are going to start with the female reproductive system. We left one part in the male reproductive system, that is the structure of the male gamete or the spermatozoa. After completing the female reproductive system, along with the male gamete, we will see also the structure and function of the female gamete also. So we left that part. First of all, we'll complete the female reproductive system, and after that we'll see the structure. So first of all, in case of female reproductive system, likewise the male reproductive system, we have the primary sex organ as well as the secondary sex organ. So in case of female, we have the primary sex organ, that is a pair of ovary, and after that we have the secondary sex organs. Number of secondary sex organs here it is present, that are uterus or the womb, a fallopian tube, a pair of fallopian tube or the oviduct we have. Then after that, here the numbers of glands we have. So those glands are mammary gland, Bartholin's gland, etc. We'll see their structure and function later on. So first of all, we'll see the structure of the location, first of all structure and location of the female reproductive system. So in case of female reproductive system, it is intra-abdominal. We have studied that the male reproductive system was present outside the abdomen. It was extra-abdominal because for the process of spermatogenesis is required less, around 2 to 2.5 degree less than the body temperature. But no such thing is occurring in the female reproductive system, so that's why it normally can occur in the normal body temperature. So that's why it is present intra-abdominally. So the location is intra-abdominal. So here in the female reproductive system, the different organs include the ovary, pair of ovary we have. Then after that we have once again a pair of fallopian tube. We have uterus. Then after that cervix. And the last structure is the external genital or vagina. So the female reproductive system include a pair of ovary, a pair of fallopian tube, uterus, as we have seen in the secondary sex organs. The uterus is also the secondary sex organ. So that include the female reproductive system, single uterus, one cervix, and the external genitals. Okay. Now let us see the structure of the female reproductive system. First of all, centrally we have the uterus. So here a single uterus, centrally it is present. On either side we are going to have the fallopian tube. So here one fallopian tube, on the other side also another fallopian tube. So this fallopian tube, the ends of the fallopian tube will have some finger-like projections like this way. The finger-like projections are known as the fimbriae. They have some important functions also, we'll see later. Now here on either side a P-shaped, very small almond-shaped or P-shaped structure, ovary is present, and these ovaries are going to attach with the uterus by a ligament, and this ligament is known as the ovarian ligament. On the another side also we are going to have the another ligament. This is known as broad ligament or suspensory ligament. So here also we will have the broad ligament or suspensory ligament. On the back side, that means on the posterior behind, also we have the peritoneal fold, and that peritoneal fold also support this ovary, and that structure here posteriorly we have the another structure. This peritoneal fold is known as the mesovarium. Now just see the fallopian tube. This fallopian tube also include a number of parts. What are they? First of all, this finger-like projections, they are known as fimbriae. Just above the fimbriae we have very small narrow tube-like structure. Actually it is hollow structure. This is known as the infundibulum. So here and here, just above the fibres, we have the infundibulum. Just above the infundibulum, here and here, we have, actually here it is a little bit more clear. Actually it is a sac, small sac-like structure present. This is known as ampulla. And on this junction, where it is going to open to the uterus, this junction is known as isthmus. So here this is the fallopian tube. Then after that come to the uterus. So this uterine horn or this central location, this is known as fundus, and here this is the uterus, and this uterus is lined by 3 folds, or we can say there are 3 membranes are present. The outermost membrane, which is the visceral peritoneum itself, this is known as perimetrium. This is a constant layer which is never going to change, or they're never going to rupture. It is a permanent layer. Just in the middle we have the second layer, and this is known as the myometrium. So this myometrium is actually the muscular layer which allow contraction and relaxation during the childbirth. It is also permanent layer. It is not going to rupture in any time. It is also a permanent layer. But the innermost, internally, we have the last membrane, or the last layer we are going to have. This is the most active layer of the uterus, which actually every month changes and changes some physiological structure, and after that it is going to rupture, and once again in the next month once again it is going to reform once again, so that freshly it can prepare itself for the process of implantation. So here this is the last layer. This is known as endometrium. Then after that come to the structure present after that. Just behind the uterus, what we are going to have, a narrow tube-like structure. Here it is present, and this is known as the cervix. So this cervix is the neck-like structure. So this neck-like structure will be made up of some cells. They are the columnar epithelial cells, and this columnar epithelial cells, they are producing some mucus, and those mucus will develop some plug here, so that in the actually in the menstrual cycle we have 3 phases. We'll see in detail later, but in the last part of the menstrual cycle, here in the cervix region, so that no male gamete can enter inside the female reproductive system, it forms the plug or block. It will be developed by this mucus here in the cervix region. So it is made up of columnar cells, and after that we will have the last part, or this external region. This is known as the external genital or the vagina. So here this is the structure of the female reproductive system. Let's just first of all label it. So this is a pair of ovary. Here ovary is present. Now there are 2 ligaments present. Behind also we have this another ligament. What are those? Here this is the broad ligament. This is the ovarian ligament. This one, which is the peritoneal fold, we'll call this as the mesovarium. So this is the structure of the ovary. Here above we will have the adipose tissue or fatty tissue, so that in any case this ovary do not detach. Now come to this fallopian tube. This finger-like projections, we will call this as the fimbriae. Just above that, this structure, this is known as infundibulum. Then here in this region, this is the ampulla. And this structure, this is the isthmus. So this is the fallopian tube. This fallopian tube will include this much region, here also, here also. We have the fimbriae, the finger-like projections. Just above that we have this infundibulum, the narrow tube-like structure. Just above this narrow tube we will have a sac-like structure or a swollen part, that is known as ampulla. Here and here we can see. Then after that we will have the last junction, that is known as the isthmus. So this is the oviduct, or we can call this as the fallopian tube. So here up to this region, this is the fallopian tube. Then after that, the uterus. This uterus, uterine horn region, what we can call it, this is known as the fundus. After that, here this uterus have three linings or these three membranes. The outermost lining was named as perimetrium, which is a visceral peritoneum. Then the middle layer, this is known as the myometrium, and the innermost or the most active layer, it is known as the endometrium. So this is the uterus or this womb. This womb will be lined by this three membrane. The perimetrium and the myometrium is the permanent layer, and only this endometrium form, reconstruct, then after that shed, and once again form in each menstrual cycle. It is the most active layer. It is the endometrium. So this is the structure of the uterus or the womb. And after that, let's just come to this neck region, and this neck region, this is known as the cervix. So this is the structure who actually have a number of functions. It actually changes the physiology of the male gamete so that the male gamete can get activated. So capacitation reaction is a reaction that occurs in the cervix region. So this cervix region is made up of a type of cell. This is the columnar cell. So this columnar cell produces some mucus, and this mucus thickens in the later phase of the menstrual cycle and develop a plug here, so that in the later phases of menstrual cycle, the spermatozoa or the sperms cannot enter inside the female reproductive system. And last part, the last external genital, this is the last part. This is also called as the vagina. So this is the structure of the female reproductive system. So this vagina, this is also a structure, external genital, which is made up of the non-keratinized squamous epithelial tissue. Non-keratinized squamous epithelial tissue means it is obviously would be the compound tissue. Striated tissue have more than one layer. So this vagina have number of function. The number of these functions are, first of all, it also releases the urine. So here the vagina help in the removal of the nitrogenous waste product or the urine, and also here this structure is the part or that tube-like structure for the removal or repulsion of the baby in later phases of the child delivery or the pregnancy, that is in the childbirth or parturition. And also it is the structure for the copulation, so that the male reproductive structure or external genital that can penetrate through this vagina, and sperms they are going to receive by the cervix, and from the cervix region the male gamete can enter inside the region of the uterus, so that the process of fertilization can occur. Actually, fertilization reaction occurs in the region here, in the ampullary ischemic region. And after that, we'll see the process, we'll have the process of implantation. Implantation occur in the endometrial lining. So this is the structure of the female reproductive system. Now just see in detail different parts of the female reproductive system. Let us see now the structure of the ovary. So first of all, this ovary, this is a pea-shaped or almond-shaped structure. I told here we have ligaments here so that it can attach to the uterus. This is the ovarian ligament. Here also another ligaments they are present. They are known as the broad ligament or suspensory ligament. Posteriorly, behind here in this region, we have the peritoneal fold, or that peritoneal fold is known as mesothelium. We have already discussed that. Now just see this ovary, this structure, what is the location? It is present actually in the lower abdominal region, and in the lower abdomen region it is going to present near the kidneys. So the location is in lower abdomen, and it is present near the kidneys. Now the next part in the ovary is their measurement. So it is around 2 to 4 centimeter, around 2 to 4 centimeter in length. Then after that around 3 centimeter in breadth, and once again 2 centimeter in thickness. So it is around 2 to 4 centimeter in length, 3 centimeter in breadth, and around 2 centimeter in thickness. Now this ovary, the size is around a T-shaped structure, and this ovary, this is going to have two parts. So here the different parts are, first outermost part, the outermost region, this is the cortex, and the central middle region, this is known as medulla. So the different parts are cortex and medulla. The outermost region, this cortex region, this is going to have one type of cell. This is known as cuboidal epithelium. So it is actually a simple layer. It is a single layer. So this is the simple epithelium and the shape is cuboidal. This is the germinal epithelium. And it is going to have the tunica albuginea. This is going to have present on the cortex region. Middle, centrally, we have the medulla. So this medulla is a stromal region which is going to have the blood vessel. So here a number of blood vessels are present. Those blood vessels have very important function. The blood vessels, these are going to have a very important function, that is to transfer the hormones. So the hormones are released for the female reproductive system. There are two different hormones are needed to actually function. They're FSH and LH, and those FSH and LH is released from the pituitary gland. So from the pituitary gland, it is the blood who actually would take this hormone, and it is reaching to the site of ovary by the same blood vessels. So blood will carry this hormone here. So here we'll see the outermost region, the cortex region, will have the cuboidal epithelial cells. So we will call this as the germinal epithelium. So this germinal epithelium is cuboidal in nature. That means it is the simple cuboidal epithelium. And this is the medulla. And this medulla is richly supplied with the blood vessels. And this is the stroma where the gametes, they can mature. So inside the ovary, before birth, a number of gametes, the gametes are formed from this germinal epithelium, and those gametes, they are known as the oogonial cells or oogonia. So those oogonia, they will undergo the normal mitosis process, simple mitosis, and after that it produces a numbers of cells. So whenever it undergo mitosis, it produces the cell. This is known as the primary oocyte. So primary oocytes, they are formed after the mitosis process from the oogonial cell, and later on this primary oocyte will undergo the growth process after birth up to puberty. So first of all, before birth, this oogonial cells, whenever the female baby is inside the mother's womb, at that time itself the process of gametogenesis occurs. So first of all, before birth, what happens inside the ovary? The oogonial cells or oogonia, they will undergo the mitosis process. After mitosis, it produces some cell. They are known as the primary oocyte. Those primary oocytes now will be around millions, and after that the growth process will carry on, and this growth process will require around 10 to 12 years it may be. And in this growth phase, actually what happens, numbers of cells, they are known as granulosa cells. So those granulosa cells will form layers around the primary oocyte. So these are known as the primary follicle. So this growth process will occur from the time of birth up to puberty. So these are known as the primary follicles. Now the chromosome number. See, we are diploid organism, and till now we have seen just the mitosis process. So whenever mitosis is occurring, so that's why we are diploid organism. So the cells, every cells of our body, till now we are going to have twice in number of chromosome. So just see what happens here. This oogoneal cell will undergo mitosis from the primary oocyte. Up to birth, we will have the primary oocyte that will be around millions. And after that, from birth up to puberty, what we will see that the primary oocyte will have a number of cells around it. They will be known as the granulosa cells, and those granulosa cells will cover this primary oocyte. So that's why these cells, they are known as the primary follicle. So just see what happens. The reproductive cycle in case of female will be started from the puberty. The puberty will occur around 10 to 12 years, and it may be extend up to, this reproductive cycle will be up to 45 or 50 years. So within this 30 or 40 years, what happen, each month only one ovum is going to form and mature. So that's why around 300 to 400 gametes only will be required for the whole reproductive period. So that's why we do not require those millions of cells. So those millions of cells will require that means lots of nutrients. So that will go in vain. So that's why body starts to degenerate some of the, actually numbers of, most of the these cells. And whenever birth occurs, after birth up to puberty, whenever growth process is occurring, and during this period of time, a number of cells, they are going to degenerate, and this degeneration process of this primary follicle is known as follicular atresia. So follicular atresia is the process of degeneration of the primary follicle, so that we can restore the energy, or we do not waste maximum of the nutrients. So after this follicular atresia also, we are going to have, till now we are going to have around 60,000 to 80,000 gametes. This is even more than enough. So up to puberty, what we are going to have, around 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicle. So it completes the growth process, and it is going to stick in the phase 1 of the meiosis process, and the next process will be started whenever the female will attain the puberty. So here we are going to have those cells. So let's just label those cells. So those cells, these are the oogoneal cell, or oogonium also we can call. These are known as the primary oocyte. So till now, up to birth, only these things are going to be seen in the ovary, and from in the ovary up to birth, from birth, this primary oocyte will develop the granulosa cells around it, and this growth process will take around 10 to 12 years, more long period. So that structure, whenever it is going to have a layer of granulosa cells, this is known as the primary follicle. So those cells, till now we are going to have the same, that is twice in number of chromosome, or 46 chromosome. So later on we'll see in the menstrual cycle what will happen. Till now we are not going to complete the whole gamete formation, how actually gametes will be produced. We will see in the later phase. So that is the structure of the ovary. So this ovary, the location is in the lower abdomen, in the kidney. The measurement is around its length 2 to 4 centimeter in length, around 3 centimeter in breadth, and 2 centimeter in thickness. Next one, in the part, that means in the ovary, we have the outermost region, this is cortex, and middle, centrally, the stromal region, this is known as medulla. Inside the ovary, we will have numbers of cells, and those are known as primary oocytes. Till birth, from birth up to puberty, we are going to have primary follicle. So this is the structure of ovary. After that, let's just start with the structure of the fallopian tube. Now let us see the structure of the fallopian tube. This fallopian tube is also known as the oviduct, and the length of the oviduct is around 10 to 12 centimeter, and it is also suspended by once again the peritoneal fold, and this peritoneal fold is known as mesosalpinx. So just see this structure of this oviduct. The main function of this oviduct or fallopian tube is for the conduction of the gamete from the region of ovary to the region of fertilization. So just see here, this is the first part of the fallopian tube. We have some finger-like projections. These are known as the fimbriae. Then after that we will have a narrow tube, and this narrow tube is known as the infundibulum. Then after that here we will have a swollen part. This is known as ampulla. Then after that we will have once again a narrow tube. This is known as isthmus. Then after that we will have the next part opening, that is known as the opening of the uterus. So just see here, let us see the labeling. First of all, this is the fimbriae. Just above the fimbriae we have the narrow tube. This is known as infundibulum. Just above the infundibulum we have a swollen part. This is known as the ampulla. And just above, after the ampulla, this part, once again this is a narrow tube. This is known as the isthmus. So this is the oviduct. Main function of this whole oviduct or the fallopian tube is for the conduction of the gamete. Conduction of the gamete to the site of fertilization. So what is the site of fertilization? The fertilization process will take place in the ampullary ischemic region. That means here in this region the possible fertilization will take place. So here first of all, just see, just minutes that we have the ovary. Normally we have a gap in between the ovary and the fimbriae or the fallopian tube. Whenever the menstrual cycle is just started, the primary follicle is going to be matured. In that period of time, we have a space in between the two ovary and the fallopian tube. Whenever the whole menstrual cycle is in the middle, that is in the time period of ovulation, in that period of time, from this ovary, one gamete, that gamete will be popped out and it will be received by the fallopian tube. In that period of time, there is a hormonal change occur, that is suddenly in the body we have high level of LH, and whenever LH increases, at that time this finger-like projection, it also get activated. That means this finger-like projection will start to roam around this whole ovary, so that whenever the gamete will be popped out by the ovary during ovulation, and in that period of time this fimbriae can receive the gamete. So what happened? This ovum is being carried to the fallopian tube. And we should know that the female gamete, the ovum, this is actually a non-motile cell. That means it cannot move. If it cannot move, then how is it possible that from the region of the ovary, it can be received by the fallopian tube and it will go against gravity to the region of ampullary isthmus region. So what happened? Inside this fallopian tube, a number of ciliated cells are there. So this whole lining is ciliated, so that the cilia, they can move, they will beat, and it will help in the conduction of the female gamete to the site of fertilization, that is up to the ampullary ischemic region. Now let us see the structure of the uterus. So this uterus, first of all, see the location. So this uterus is present in between the urinary bladder and the rectum. So it is present in between the bladder and the rectum, and this uterus or the womb that is also covered by, or this is also suspended by a mesentery that is known as the meso. So this mesometrium is the mesentery who also going to suspend the uterus. So this uterus location is this. Now after that we'll see the measurement. It is around 7.5 centimeter in length, around 5 centimeter in breadth, and 2.5 centimeter in thickness. So this is the uterus. Location is present in between urinary bladder and the rectum, and it is also suspended, covered, protected by the mesometrium. It is actually the mesentery present, and this measurement is around 7.5 into 5 into 2.5 in length, breadth and thickness. Now just see the structure of the uterus. So this uterus will going to have the horn. This structure is the fundus. So this is the uterus. This uterus is lined by three membranes, or this three covering. This outermost covering, this is known as the perimetrium. So this perimetrium actually is the visceral peritoneum. The middle layer actually is the muscular layer. This is known as the myometrium, and the internal layer or the innermost layer, this is known as the endometrium. So this is the innermost layer, this is known as the endometrium. So this endometrium is highly vascular and glandular. This myometrium is actually a muscular layer. So this is the three layers we have. Now each of them, they will have their own functions. First of all, the outermost perimetrium is just the covering. It is protective in nature, and it is also going to give the shape of the uterus. Now the middle layer, this is known as the myometrium. Myometrium is muscular layer which provide vigorous contraction and relaxation during the childbirth or parturition. So in this parturition, this baby will come out from the mother's body, and this contraction will be provided by this myometrium under the control of some hormones. We'll see in detail in after that whenever we'll come to parturition. Now this innermost layer is known as the endometrium. So this endometrium is actually the most active layer, and why I'm calling it as an active layer, because every month it is going to form, construct, then degenerate, ruptures, once again it is formed. So in a cyclic manner, this endometrium ruptures and forms so that newly it can prepare itself for the process of implantation. Implantation means the fetus or this embryo that get attached to the endometrium layer. This is by this endometrium. So this endometrium have to start the process of implantation. So this endometrium undergoes some cyclic changes in the menstrual cycle. We'll see that in the first part of the menstrual cycle it is going to form, and in the later phases it is going to be thickened. It starts to become more and more vascular. Vascular means it is going to have more coiled blood vessels so that it can give the proper nourishment to the growing baby. And after that, whenever suppose the process of pregnancy is not started, So in case of non-pregnant woman, this endometrium ruptures, and whenever it ruptures, we will have the menstrual bleeding. We'll see in the menstrual cycle in later. So this is the endometrium. So this is the structure of the uterus. Then after that, we'll see the structure of the cervix and the vagina in this part. So let us see the structure of the cervix and the external genital or vagina. So here we have this uterus. So this uterus is going to extend here. This region is known as cervix. So this cervix will extend. Then after that we will have the last part, that is vagina or the opening external genital. So just see here this cervix. This is the region. This is actually very much important. Why? Because this cervix is going to help in the capacitation reaction. I told, if you can remember, that in the male reproductive system, inside the region of epididymis, temporarily the male gamete deactivates, and that process I mentioned was decapacitation reaction. So the male gamete above the acrosome, we had a glycoprotein layer, because of what the male gamete or the sperm do not release its enzymes inside the male reproductive system. But whenever it reaching to the region of the female reproductive system, it has to be activated, and this activation process will be carried out by the cervix region. So this cervix will help in the removal of this glycoprotein layer from the sperm, and that process is known as the process of capacitation or capacitation reaction. After that, this region, this is known as the vagina or the external genital. So first of all, this vagina or the external genital, it is made up of, it's going to have a type of cell that is non-keratinized squamous compound epithelial tissue or epithelium. And the cervix, this is made up of columnar epithelial tissue. So first of all, in case of vagina, if you see the structure, this vagina will have two openings. Once again, here this is the urinary opening, and this is the vagina or the external part or external genital. So here this is the urinary opening or urinary opening you can call, and this part, this is actually the vagina. Now in this region, we have a very important structure that actually is the homologous organ to the male external genital or the penis. So here the urinary opening and vagina, they are present separately, and here we have a gland. As I already have told you that the female reproductive system, the secondary sex organ includes some glands. So here one gland is present that is known as Bartholin's gland. So this Bartholin's gland is very much important. Why? Because this Bartholin's gland, it secretes alkaline secretion, and this alkaline secretion is actually for the neutralization of the acidity of the urine. So this Bartholin's gland will release a secretion that is alkaline in nature, and this alkaline secretion will neutralize the acidity of the urine. As you can remember, in the male reproductive system also, bulbourethral gland or the Cowper's gland was releasing some alkaline secretion so that it can neutralize the acidity of the urine in male reproductive system. So here what happens, Bartholin's gland will release the same kind of liquid that is alkaline in nature so that it can neutralize the acidity of the urine here in the female reproductive system. Now, above this urinary opening, we have a structure. That structure actually have the endings, nerve ending, that is known as the clitoris, and this clitoris is the homologous organ to the male reproductive system, external genital, that was penis. So in case of penis also as well as clitoris also, both of them, they will help, that will have the nerve ending, and this is actually the homologous organ. Homologous organ means it has the same origin, and as a rudimentary organ, it is present in the female reproductive system. So as a homologous organ to the male reproductive system penis, the clitoris is present in the female reproductive system. Here, to protect this vagina, we have two foldings. So here, two foldings we have, the inner folding and the outer folding. So here we have the inner folding, and here this one is the inner folding, and outer one is the black one is the outer folding. So this inner folding, this is known as the labia minora, and the outer folding, this is known as the labia majora. Basically, this both labia majora and labia minora, they protect the female openings, both this urinary as well as the vaginal opening, from any external outer any sources. So that is the structure of the cervix and the vagina. We'll now see the process of menstrual cycle that occurs in the female reproductive system cyclically. Now let us see the whole process of menstrual cycle. So this menstrual cycle actually is the cyclic changes that occur inside the ovary for the process of development of gamete and prepares the uterus for implantation. See what happens in the menstrual cycle. So this menstrual cycle basically help in two functions. First of all, it help in the formation of the gamete. So this gamete will be formed inside the ovary, that will be inside the menstrual cycle. And second thing, it also help the uterus prepare for the process of implantation. That means after this process, suppose gametes are been formed, and after that fertilization had occurred, after that process of fertilization, implantation will occur after 72 hours. So for that process, implantation to carry or to start, it also prepares the uterus for that implantation also. So this menstrual cycle, that actually the time period, the duration is around, in normal case, it is around 28 days. Now just see, in this menstrual cycle, we have different phases that will occur. We basically divide it in 4 different phases. First phase, this is the preparatory phase or follicular phase. So first phase in the menstrual cycle is the follicular phase. Second phase, this is after follicular phase, we have ovulation. Third phase, we have the process that is luteal phase, or we can also call it as the secretory phase. And after that we'll come to the last phase, that is menstrual phase or bleeding phase. So here in the menstrual cycle we have the 4 phases. So first phase is the follicular phase. That will, if you see the time period, that is 28 days. So first of all, this follicular phase will be started from the 3rd to 4th day up to 14th day. Ovulation will carry on exactly in the middle of the menstrual cycle, that is on the 14th day. Then from the 15th day to 28th day, that is the in the third phase, we'll come to the third phase, luteal or secretory phase. And from 28th day up to 2 to 4 days, that or 3-4 days, that is the menstrual phase or bleeding phase. Now just see, there are a lot of questions that can come from the need point of view, that the menstrual cycle, if it is 28th day, then the time period will be like this. If suppose the menstrual cycle that is around 35 day long, then if I ask you, suppose here this is the cycle, and in the question it is given that this is the cycle and this is the 35-day cycle. So you have to tell what is A, B, C and D. So this D phase will include how many days. So lot of things, complicated thing that can come from this part. So one thing always remember, that this menstrual cycle, if you see in this way, suppose this is a straight line, here this is the 14th day. From 14th to 28th day, we have the luteal phase or secretory phase that will never gonna extend or decrease. It will be always 14th day time phase. Now, if that menstrual cycle suppose is a longer cycle of 35 days, then this follicular phase will increase. And if that whole menstrual cycle is suppose 21 days, then also this secretory phase will include the same 14 days, just this follicular phase will become shorter. So this thing you have to always remember, this luteal phase or secretory phase is going to be always constant of 14 days only, and depending upon that, suppose duration is 28 days or 35 days or 21 days, whatever it will be, this only phase, that follicular phase, is going to be increased or decreased. Now let us see the whole process of menstrual cycle. Along with that also we'll see the hormonal regulation. So this menstrual cycle to occur, to go on, it requires the hormones. So the hormones will be released from the pituitary gland, that are FSH and LH. Now this pituitary gland, to release FSH and LH, it need to be stimulated, and this actually will be stimulated by the another gland present just above the pituitary gland, that is the hypothalamus. So just see here, suppose this is the hypothalamus and this will extend, this is the pituitary gland. So this pituitary gland will have two parts. One is anterior pituitary, as this is the anterior pituitary and this is the posterior pituitary. So first of all, this hypothalamus, by this hypophyseal portal system or this duct system, that will stimulate the gonadotropin releasing part or the cells, that will be the adenohypophysis or anterior pituitary. So this hypothalamus, what type of thing will be released, or that hormone is released to activate or to stimulate this anterior pituitary, is GnRH. So remember, this hypothalamus, by this hypophyseal portal system, one hormone is released, that is GnRH, that means gonadotropin releasing hormone. So GnRH, whenever it is released from this hypothalamus, it stimulates these cells of this anterior pituitary, and this, under the influence of this anterior pituitary, this GnRH, anterior pituitary will now release the hormone, that is FSH and LH. So first of all, we'll see the cyclic changes that will occur, and later on we'll see what hormone will be inhibited by which hormone, we'll see later on. But first of all, under the influence of GnRH, First of all, this anterior pituitary will release the FSH, not the LH now. So first of all, FSH is released, and I told you that in the ovarian stroma we have the blood vessel. So via the blood from the brain, from the pituitary gland, the FSH will come to the ovarian stroma. Now what happened here inside the ovary? I already have mentioned that this ovary consists of the cells. These are the primary oocytes, and this primary oocytes, around the primary oocyte we have a layer of granulosa cell, and those granulosa cells are known as, because of these granulosa cells, we will call this primary oocyte as the primary follicle. So here this primary follicles are already present from the birth up to puberty. It has already been growth, and it is restricted in the prophase 1. Now, whenever that female attains puberty, at that time the hypothalamus will release this GnRH hormone. Via this hypophyseal portal system, it stimulates the pituitary gland, and this pituitary gland will release the hormone FSH. Now, this FSH via the blood will come from the pituitary gland near the kidneys. Just see, via the blood, it will come to the region of ovary. And in the ovary, we have the primary follicle already. So, this primary follicle will start the next phase. That means it will accelerate the process of meiosis. From prophase 1, it will start the metaphase 1, and then it will proceed to anaphase, and then it will complete the first meiosis. So what happens? See, these primary follicles are already present. Now, under this influence of this FSH, this primary follicle will just increase the number of granulosa cells, and this granulosa cell will start to increase its membrane around it. So this primary follicle will have numbers of membrane like this. So this is known as the secondary follicle. Also, we should know one very important thing, that around this primary oocyte will have another non-cellular layer that will be started to develop, that is known as the zona pellucida layer. So this zona pellucida layer will be formed in this phase also. This is the secondary follicle. Now this secondary follicle will mature to the last tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle, when this granulosa cell will have maximum 6, 7 or up to 9 membranes around it. So this is the structure. This is the Graafian follicle. Suppose this is the Graafian follicle. So what happened in the Graafian follicle? First of all, it will have the membranes. 7 membranes will be present, maybe more than that, up to 9 membranes. Then after that, we are going to have the cell, that is the primary oocyte. So primary oocyte is still present. Here inside the primary follicle also, primary oocyte was still there. Just around that membrane, a granulosa cell layer is being formed. So that's why we will call this as the primary follicle. Later on, it start to increase the membrane numbers and also develop a crescent type hollow structure. So that structure is some pocket bag like structure. So it is present there in the secondary follicle, and in the secondary follicle also a very important thing is been developed, that is the non-cellular zona pellucida layer. So primary oocyte itself will develop the, so around it will have the zona pellucida layer. Now see, this primary oocyte is still there, but around the primary oocyte it will have the zona pellucida also. As we can see here, this is the zona pellucida, this is still present, and around that, see, here in between this zona pellucida and this membrana granulosa, we develop a cavity, and that cavity is known as antrum. And remember, this antrum is filled with fluid, and that fluid is known as liquor folliculi. And now one very important thing also you have to remember, that in this structure we develop some pocket like structure, and those pockets are important structure. Why? Because it carries a acid, that is the hyaluronic acid. So some vacuole-like structure has been developed, that is hyaluronic acid. We'll later on study, whenever we'll study the structure of the graphene follicle, we'll see in detail what are those. So this is the tertiary follicle. So what happens here? Under the influence of FSH, this primary follicle will develop into secondary follicle, and then the secondary follicle will develop, matures into tertiary follicle. So here, these are the structures that will be developed. So for the maturation from the primary follicle up to tertiary follicle, this tertiary follicle is also known as graphene follicle. So this process, first phase we have completed, that is the follicular phase. So follicular phase requires how many days? From 3 to 4th day up to 14th day. So within that 10 days, 10, or it can be decreased also, increased also. So within that roughly 10 days period, it develops from primary follicle to tertiary follicle. So what happens? A very important thing is happening here, that whenever this primary follicle is growing, it starts to release, that means the secondary follicle as well as tertiary follicle, it releases one very important hormone that is known as estrogen. We will call this as estro, O-E-S-T-R-O, or estrogen, or simply we can call estrogen, E-S-T-R-O-G-E-N. Both of them is same. So estrogen hormone is released from those follicles, and this estrogen is very much important. Why? Because this estrogen helps in the formation of the endometrium layer. As you can remember, I told that in the uterus we had 3 membranes: outer perimetrium, middle myometrium, and inner the endometrium. So this endometrium lining was not present. So in this influence of estrogen, what happens? This endometrium lining will be started to form. Now this whole process, that means the follicular phase, is completed. So whenever follicular phase is completed, we will see one very important thing is happening, that whenever estrogen is releasing, this estrogen gives actually a negative feedback to this, as well as this tertiary follicle will release another hormone too, that is the inhibin hormone. So both of them will give negative feedback to the hypothalamus as well as the pituitary gland not to release the FSH hormone, because FSH hormone basically will help in the formation of the gamete. Already the gametes are been formed, so that's why we do not require no more FSH. We do not require FSH. So that's why FSH level will start to decrease. But at that very time, what happens on the 14th day? On the 14th day, suddenly the GnRH that will actually stimulate the pituitary gland to release the LH hormone. So on the 14th day, actually, the LH hormone, this LH hormone will be released. And what happens in the influence of LH hormone? That this graphene follicle completes the first meiosis only. That I told, in the primary follicle it completes only prophase 1. So after prophase 1 it will complete metaphase 1, anaphase, and then telophase, and this structure, you can see this primary oocyte only complete the first meiosis. So after completing the first meiosis, we'll see 2 cells are being formed. One cell, this is actually known as the first polar body. So first polar body is been formed, and after that we will have the secondary oocyte. So this is known as the secondary oocyte. So secondary oocyte will be formed, and this secondary oocyte will be popped out. It will actually migrate to the wall of the ovary, and it will be popped out by just simple process of exocytosis. It will be popped out of this ovary, and it will be received by, you can remember that here this is the uterus, suppose, and here we have the ovary. So above that we have the fallopian tube, remember. Now this ovary, whenever it releases this ovum will be captured by the fallopian tube, and fallopian tube will move. It will actually conduct this ovum to the region of ampullary ischemic region for the process of fertilization. Actually, this secondary oocyte will wait for 3 to 4 days for the process of fertilization. So if fertilization do not occur, then this ovum that will not complete the second meiosis and it will just degenerate. And if fertilization occur, then what happened here to this region, ampullary ischemic region, the spermatozoa will reach, and after that process of fertilization will occur. But for this period of time, fertilization is not occurring, suppose, then what happens? See, this primary oocyte was popped, complete the first meiosis and formed the two cells, first polar body and the secondary oocyte. So secondary oocyte is coming out, and this first polar body will degenerate inside the ovary itself. See, it can never happen that the first polar body also can remove outside the ovary and it can reach the fallopian tube. Never happens. So what never happens means, in case of human it not happening, but in case of some other organisms it is possible that this first polar body can also undergo the meiosis and multiple ovum will be formed. But in case of human female, the female reproductive system is made such a way that it can carry only one embryo only. So that's why here the first polar body will degenerate inside the ovary itself. Maybe it is possible sometime the first polar body undergo the normal mitosis and can form two cells, but later on after 2-3 days it will degenerate. So secondary oocyte that will be catched by the fallopian tube and it will reach to the ampullary ischemic region. Now to see what is happening to this remaining granulosa cell. I told here with this green colored layer, that is actually the granulosa cells. So these granulosa cells are still present. So here these granulosa cells are still there. So those granulosa cell with granulosa cell with all this structure, which actually the ruptured part, this ruptured structure will develop a structure. This is known as corpus luteum. So a structure will be formed after the ovulation process. See, this removal of the secondary oocyte is known as ovulation. Ovulation will occur on the 14th day. Now, after 14th day, what happens? Suddenly, this LH will also decrease. LH will not at all will be released. But at that time, what happened inside the ovary? What is present? What actually develop a structure that is called as corpus luteum. Luteum means yellow. That means in this structure, this granulosa cell, the granulosa cell's membranes, this will actually develop a yellow color in the cytoplasm. So that's why we will call this as the corpus luteum. Now this corpus luteum will release 3 different hormones. See, this structure, Graafian follicle itself was releasing estrogen in the earlier phase. But now, whenever corpus luteum is been formed, it is the same structure actually. So it will continue the release of estrogen. So estrogens will be continued to release. Along with that, it will release another hormone, that is progesterone. So progesterone will be the chief hormone released from the corpus luteum, and along with that it will also release inhibin that gives negative feedback. This inhibin gives the negative feedback to the hypothalamus not to release the FSH. So in this period of time, inside the ovary, we are going to have the corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum is formed on the 15th day, and whenever on the 15th day corpus luteum has been formed, it continue the release of estrogen hormone. It starts to increase the release of progesterone hormone. But gradually this estrogen hormone falls and progesterone hormone increases. Under the influence of this progesterone hormone, see what happened. Earlier, we know that estrogen hormone, whenever it was released, it helped in the formation of endometrium. But now whenever this corpus luteum is being formed, gradually estrogen levels start to decrease and this progesterone hormone will start to increase. Now what happens, due to this influence of this progesterone hormone, this endometrium will retains its structure, mean it is remain there, it will not gonna shed till now. So this due to the influence of this progesterone hormone, this endometrium will become highly glandular and vascular. That means inside the endometrium blood vessels will gonna be more coiled, and also it develops some gland cells. So here this progesterone hormone will start to release by this corpus luteum, and after this endometrium will also start to get thicker by this progesterone hormone, formation by estrogen hormone. So this corpus luteum will now start to release progesterone hormone. So from 15th day it will reach, this progesterone hormone will continue to release. So gradually, whenever, suppose this ovum is in the region of fallopian tube waiting for fertilization, fertilization does not occur. So gradually this become over-ripened. This cervix, after the suppose later secretory phase, from the 15th to 28th day, it may remain inside the fallopian tube waiting for fertilization. Fertilization do not occur. So in that period of time, this cervix will develop a plug, and because of that plug, the semen along with the spermatozoa will not going to reach to the site of fertilization. At the very same time, this ovum will also start to move towards the region of the fundus. That means it get over-ripened. So at that period of time, corpus luteum no need to release progesterone hormone because fertilization do not occur. Endometrium do not have to perform in the implantation process. So gradually this corpus luteum will start to degenerate from around 15, it will start to release 20 day, it is continue the release of progesterone hormone, but gradually from this 20, 21, 22, around 28 days, it leaves just a scar. And whenever it leaves just a scar, this structure is known as the corpus albicans. Albicans means it is no more yellow in color now, it is only white in color. So whenever corpus albicans is formed, from 15th day it will go to 28th day. So whenever 28th day reaches, at that time corpus luteum is no more present, it will no more release progesterone hormone, and as there is no progesterone hormone, what happens to endometrium? This endometrium will start to rupture. It starts to remove from this uterine lining. So gradually, whenever this membrane will start to rupture, endometrium start to rupture, suppose like this, that's why what happened, the blood vessel will get exposed. Like the normal skin is suppose teared, the blood vessels are exposing. At the same way also, what happens, due to the lack of progesterone hormone, this endometrium start to shed, and whenever this endometrium start to shed, the blood vessels get exposed, and whenever the blood vessels get exposed, blood will come out. So after 28th day, I told in the menstrual cycle we'll come to the fourth phase, that is the bleeding phase or menstrual phase. From 28th day up to 3/4 days, we have this menstrual phase or bleeding phase. In that phase, what happens? This corpus albicans will no more release the hormone progesterone. That's why endometrium sheds. Ruptured endometrium exposes the blood vessels. So blood along with ruptured endometrium and along with that unfertilized or over-ripened or unfertilized ovum will come out from this vaginal opening, and that is known as bleeding or the last phase, that is the menstrual phase. So this way we complete the whole steps, all the steps of the menstrual cycle. So in this menstrual cycle we have 4 changes we'll see. First of all, from 3rd to 4th day up to 14th day, this phase is known as follicular phase, when primary follicle matures to the graphene follicle. In the influence of FSH and itself, this follicle will release the estrogen hormone. Because of this estrogen hormone, this endometrium forms. After that, on the 14th day, gradually we'll have a LH surge, and because of this LH surge, this graphene follicle completes its first meiosis, produce two cells. One thing you have to remember, as already I told, that the primary, secondary as well as tertiary follicle had twice n chromosome. That means it is going to have the 46 chromosome. But whenever the first meiosis completes and it forms the two cell, first polar body and secondary oocyte, it completes the first meiosis, means reduction division occurs, and it is going to have only one set of chromosome. That is going to have only 23 chromosome. Both the first polar body as well as secondary oocyte will have only half of each pair. That means from 46 chromosome it is going to decrease to 23 chromosome. So on the 14th day, whenever LH hormone is released, what happened to the first polar body? It is going to degenerate inside the ovary itself in case of human. But this secondary oocyte will come towards the region of ovarian membrane. It will be exocytosed, it will be popped out by the ovary, and it will be catched by the fallopian tube. And by the ciliary movement of this fallopian tube itself, this ovum, the secondary oocyte itself, will reach to the site of ampullary ischemic region, which is the site for fertilization process. Now, after 14th day, we'll have the next structure. After this removal of this primary oocyte to form both these two cells, this granulosa cells will develop another structure that is known as now corpus luteum, which is yellowish in structure. It will release another hormone that is known as progesterone hormone. Along with that, it will continue the release of estrogen hormone and inhibin. Estrogen will start to decrease, progesterone will increase, and inhibin will give a negative feedback to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, because it do not want the another cycle to be continued. Still we have this structure, corpus luteum. Whenever it is still there inside the ovary, we should not have another follicular phase to occur. So till this secretory phase completes, the next cycle will not going to start, or it should not overlap until it's complete. So that's why corpus luteum will release this inhibin, so that this hypothalamus will no more stimulate the pituitary gland, and this pituitary gland will not release FSH until this process, this cycle completes. So corpus luteum will release this progesterone hormone. This endometrium lining will be get thickened, so that, because you can see here, suppose the secondary oocyte is there, fertilization occurs. After that, what will happen? Fertilization completes, implantation will occur. So for the implantation process, this uterus have to make itself ready for implantation. So that's why endometrium gets more and more thickened. But now for this time period, suppose fertilization do not occur. So at that period of time, corpus luteum will start to degenerate, and up to 28th day it will be there. But on the 28th day, as there is no hormone, actually whenever implantation occurs, one hormone is released, that is HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. And this human chorionic gonadotropin, if it is not released, that means implantation has not occurred, in that period of time, corpus luteum will develop the corpus albicans. It is just a scar, and it will no more release progesterone hormone. So we complete the secretory phase or luteal phase, and after that we'll come to the last phase of the menstrual cycle, and that is the menstrual phase or bleeding phase from 28th day to 3rd to 4th day. In that period of time, due to the lack of progesterone hormone, due to the lack of all these hormones, actually what happens to the endometrium? It start to rupture, blood vessels get exposed, and its menstrual bleeding will have ruptured endometrium, blood, and the unfertilized egg will come outside the body through the vagina. So that will complete the whole menstrual cycle. Now let us see the process, hormonal regulation in the process of menstrual cycle. So first of all, we have the hypothalamus that will start the whole process. Then after that, the next one, that is pituitary gland. So first of all, this hypothalamus will release a hormone that is GnRH. So GnRH hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, will stimulate the anterior pituitary, and then the anterior pituitary release a hormone that is FSH. So whenever FSH is released on the 3rd to 4th day, on that period of time, via the blood it will reach to the ovary and it will stimulate the process of oogenesis. That means now we'll see the process of oogenesis. Here, due to the influence of FSH, the primary follicle, this primary follicle will develop the secondary follicle, and then the secondary follicle will develop, matures to tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle. So, due into the influence of FSH, this primary to tertiary follicle will release another hormone, that is estrogens. So, in the influence of this estrogen, two functions will happen. First of all, in this influence of the estrogen, it helps these follicles to mature itself, to develop itself and form the granulosa cell. So this estrogen will help in the whole process of oogenesis for the formation of the primary follicle to tertiary follicle itself, for the maturation of the gametes. And second, it will help the endometrium to form inside the uterus, and also it helps another function, that is it helps also in the development of the secondary sexual characters. So the development of the secondary sexual characters. So sexual characters will include the development of the mammary gland, more lobulation will occur, more fatty tissue or adipose tissue will get accumulated in the breast or the ovary. Along with that, it will help the thyroid gland to help or to develop not thyroid gland, the larynx, to develop a female more high pitched voice, female voice. And along with that, other organs like the uterus, the fallopian tube, the vagina, that will get more developed, that is included in the secondary sexual characters. So secondary sexual character for the formation of tertiary follicle from the primary follicle. Along with that, for the formation of endometrium in the uterus, this estrogen will help. Now, the next one, that is another hormone, that is LH hormone, that will be released once again in the influence of Z and RH. That LH hormone will be released on the 14th day, and whenever this LH hormone is released, it will help in one function, that is in the process of oogenesis. So not oogenesis, in the ovulation. So ovulation process will be carried. Ovulation means for the removal or that formation of this secondary oocyte, and that secondary oocyte will be popped outside the ovary and it will be catched by fallopian tube. That is known as ovulation. So that ovulation process will be stimulated by this LH hormone. So this will occur in the 14th day. After 14th day, what happens inside the ovary? We have another structure that is known as the corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum will release a hormone. Actually, 3 hormones it will be released. That will be inhibin. So this inhibin will give negative feedback to the hypothalamus, so that to the FSH, to the pituitary gland, not to release FSH. Next one, progesterone hormone. Progesterone hormone actually have two functions. One is negative feedback to the GnRH not to release from the hypothalamus. Along with that, this progesterone hormone also help this endometrium to present, to retain inside the uterus for the process of implantation. So it will be there, this endometrium will be still present in the uterine lining, prepares itself for the process of implantation. And last one, it will actually also release the estrogen in a very less amount, but it will be still released. But gradually, whenever will proceed the secretory phase, this estrogen level will start to decrease. So estrogen hormone function, already we have seen these three functions. So that is the function of corpus luteum. So all these things, this hypothalamus and pituitary gland, that will release the pituitary hormone so that the menstrual cycle can be started. And inside the ovary, the two local hormones, that will be estrogen, then progesterone, chiefly inhibin and estrogen from the corpus luteum. Once second, this local hormone will also help in many ways in the menstrual cycle. So this corpus luteum and this follicles, the primary, secondary as well as the tertiary follicle, will help this menstrual cycle to be carried on, uterine changes that will be carried on also by the same hormone, that is estrogen, progesterone, inhibin. These are the local hormone. FSH and LH, these are the pituitary hormones. If we represent the whole hormonal regulation on a graph, then the hormones, if we plot in a graph, let us see how it will be. First of all, on the first day, from the 0th day, from 0 to 1 day, first day will start. On this is the middle, that is on the 14th day, and this is 28th day, suppose. So here we'll count the time on days, and here we'll see the concentration of hormones. So let's just see first of all what happens here. First of all, on the first day of the menstrual cycle, we don't have any hormones. So from first up to third day, we'll have no LH hormone, no FSH hormone. So first of all, this is suppose the line of FSH hormone. From first to third day, it will be not released, but gradually from third to fourth day, it will start to release. It will gradually increase, FSH will increase, and after 14th day, whenever estrogen starts to release, it gives negative feedback, so that's why FSH falls, and in the secretory phase or luteal phase will no more have FSH hormone. So FSH hormone, this is the graph. If you see LH hormone will be very less up to the last part, but gradually on the 14th day it suddenly increases due to the high level of the GnRH. So due to the high level of GnRH, it suddenly increase only for some hours, and after that, after ovulation, it will once again decrease. But these are the two hormones of the hormones of pituitary gland to maintain, to start, to initiate the menstrual cycle. Next one, if we see the local hormones, first of all, estrogen. So in the release of FSH, we can see the follicular process, the folliculogenesis, or the formation of secondary follicle from tertiary and tertiary follicle from secondary, it will be started. So what happens for the hormone FSH, estrogen? Estrogen will start to increase as FSH increase. So due to FSH, follicular process has been started, so estrogen will increase. But whenever ovulation occurs, the Graafian follicle ruptures. So as the source has been ruptured, of this estrogen hormone will also fall. But whenever once again corpus luteum will be formed, it will continue once again release a little bit of estrogen, but also it will decrease in the later phases of luteal phase. And if you come to the last part, that is the progesterone hormone will be no more seen in the first phase, that is in the bleeding phase also, as well as in the follicular or preparatory phase, it will be not released. So there is no progesterone here. Whenever the last, that is after 14th day, the process of luteal phase or corpus luteum will be formed. At that time, the progesterone hormone will start to increase, and suddenly whenever it is on the 28th day, fertilization do not occur, implantation did not occur. At that time, progesterone will be once again fall. So that's why the level of progesterone will also decrease and this endometrium sheds. So this is the hormonal regulation. If you see all these hormones, once again I will just mark all those hormones. First of all, this blue colored hormone, this graph is for the hormone FSH. This red colored hormone is only released for only one day, that is LH hormone. Next one, estrogen. That estrogen is released from the Graafian follicle as well as corpus luteum. This is because of Graafian follicle, and this surge is because of the corpus luteum. So this is the hormone estrogen. And the black colored that lining as actually represents the last ovarian hormone, that is progesterone, and it is because of the corpus luteum. It releases the hormone progesterone. Now let us see the last part of this female reproductive system, that is oogenesis process. So this oogenesis process is actually a very long process. It will be started right before the birth. Whenever the baby is under the mother's womb, at that time, before birth, the ovary is already formed. So in the ovary, we have the germinal epithelium, and from the germinal epithelium, those oogonial cells. So those oogonial cells that will start to undergo the mitosis process. It is twice n in chromosome number. So those oogonial cell will undergo the mitosis process, and from this mitosis process it produces the cell. This is known as primary oocyte. So this primary oocyte will be formed from the birth, before birth till birth. We are going to have the primary oocyte. It is also going to have twice n number of chromosome. But after birth till puberty, we have the next phase. That is the growth phase of the primary oocyte. So that primary oocyte will continue it will actually enter in the meiosis process. It will start the first meiosis, prophase 1. So here in this phase, this primary oocyte will form the primary follicle. In this primary follicle also we have the twice n number of chromosome, where around the primary oocyte we have a number of some cells that will surround the primary follicle, that is known as the granulosa cells. So those granulosa cells will make a membrane around the primary follicle, primary oocyte, that is known as primary follicle, and that primary follicle will start to mature to the secondary follicle, secondary to the tertiary follicle later on. But before puberty, from birth up to puberty, in the ovary, in both the two ovaries, what happened? We have millions of primary follicles. So those millions of primary follicles are not needed in the entire reproductive period of one female. So that's why, to conserve energy, not to waste the nutrients, that's why a number of follicular cells, see, this is important, a number of follicular cells number of follicular cells degenerates, and whenever it degenerates, what happens? The millions of cells will decrease to around 60,000 to 80,000, and that phase, that process of degeneration of primary follicle from million and inside the ovary, after this process we have around 60,000 to 80,000 only primary follicle. That process is known as the follicular atresia. So in this follicular atresia, a number of follicular cells degenerates from the time of birth up to puberty. So at the time of puberty, we are going to have around only 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles. So this phase, the next phase will be started, and this primary follicle will start the next phase. That means this will continue the next stage, that is from the first prophase 1, it will continue the second, that is metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and it will complete the first meiosis after the puberty in the influence of the hormone, that is FSH and LH. So what happened? This primary follicle will develop to secondary follicle, and this secondary follicle will mature to tertiary follicle or the Graafian follicle. So this Graafian follicle, once it has been formed, then what happened? We'll have the process of ovulation. So whenever ovulation occurs, that means the first meiosis process, first meiosis completes, and this primary, this tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle will form two cells. One is first polar body and another one is a secondary oocyte. So this is the first polar body, and this first polar body will degenerate. So here this process will occur during puberty. So first polar body is been formed, and after ovulation that secondary oocyte has been formed. That secondary oocyte will have only n number of chromosome, or only 23 chromosome. So that secondary oocyte will go to the region of the fallopian tube. Which region? That is ampullary ischemic region for the process of the fertilization. So secondary oocyte, it will reach the ampullary ischemic region of the fallopian tube. Once this structure, this secondary oocyte will reach the fallopian tube, if fertilization do not occur, oogenesis do not complete. And only if fertilization occurs, see here it is important point, in the book it's not given, if fertilization occurs only, then only it is possible that the secondary oocyte will start the next meiosis. That means first meiosis is already completed, second meiosis will not complete if fertilization do not occur. So if fertilization occurs, then the secondary oocyte will form two cells once again. First cell, this is the second polar body, and this is the ovum. So only this ovum carry the characteristics for the process of fertilization. Only if fertilization or that spermatozoa reach the site of fallopian tube and it fertilizes, before fertilization process, that means before the exchange of the gamete, that secondary oocyte will start the process of the second meiosis. So second meiosis will complete, and both these two cells, second polar body and the ovum, will be formed. So second polar body, if it is formed, it will degenerate after some time. So first polar body as well as second polar body, that will degenerate. So this way the process of oogenesis completes, and only this ovum will fertilize with the sperm, and a zygote, twice in zygote, will be formed, and this way will complete the whole female reproductive system. In the next video we'll see the male gamete and the female gamete, both the structures and their functions. Thank you.